Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Feeling Seen, the podcast that talks about the movies that make us feel seen. I have a co-host today with a resume that, as I was writing stuff down, I was like, Jesus, this is a solid body of work right in front of me. You may know him from years past, from the show Totally Biased with W. Kamau Bell from FX and FXX. You may have read his book, The Awkward Thoughts of W. Kamau Bell, but don't confuse that with the new book that's about to come out, which is Do the Work, an anti-racist activity book, which he put out with Kate Schatz. But then maybe you saw his show from earlier this year on Showtime, We Need to Talk About Cosby, and maybe you're a CNN viewer, so you know United Shades of America, which is also currently now airing new episodes. So I could go on. Maybe, perhaps check out that Private School Negro Netflix comedy special. And I'm not even done, but to keep going would be a bit, I don't know, pedantic. So W. Kamau Bell... Wow. Yes. Busy 2022. Yeah. Not that you did all these things in the past 3 months and now they're coming out right now, but when you have an onslaught of work coming out at a small window in time, is it like, wow, all of that is out the door and I sort of feel a weight off my shoulders for now?
Oh no, the weight is still there because there's other things that I'm now working on. So it's like that never. A couple things. One, if I didn't have a wife and kids, I would probably not work so much. So I think there's a thing about my 3 kids wanting to eat every day that I sort of puts a little bit of panic in you. And as someone who's in show business, you don't it's not like working at a factory where you go, I'll just have to do this job. I'm in the union. I am in the union, but it's not really the same kind of union job that America used to be proud of and now is trying to destroy. So there's that. And then there's just a lot of this specifically was work that was like the book me and my co-author Kate Schatz started working on during the pandemic. And so it's sort of there was sort of this thing about things had slowed down. And there was a moment where I was we had this idea for this book. And I was also I don't know when I'll be going back on the road to film United Shades anymore. Or we were working on the Cosby thing and that had shut down. And I was like, maybe I'll never go out on the road again. And then the fall came and CNN is yep, just like always, we're going. I'm but there's no vaccine.
There's no vaccine.
And also I'm scared. That's good. We like it when you're scared. And so I was suddenly had too much on my plate. So it does feel good to this book I'm really excited to get out. Because like I said, we started working on it in post George Floyd's murder. And the publisher was always too bad we can't release this today because America's really talking about racism right now. And we're that's probably going to be fine. That's probably going to be.
You're if I know evergreen topics.
Yeah, so it doesn't feel less relevant now than it did 2 years ago, sadly.
Completely tangentially, but I did just want it must have been subconscious this morning when I made the choice. I don't know if you yourself are a sports fan, but I did wear my pool party Jordan Poole Golden State Warriors t-shirt.
I'm not only am I a fan of Golden State, first of all, and I got to go to one of the finals games because luckily I've lived long enough in the Bay Area. I know people, so I got to go with my friend Pastor Michael McBride. But also, I feel I've been pretty basketball blessed in my life. I grew up in Chicago during the Michael Jordan era.
Come on.
So
have you oriented your life around where Steve Kerr is going to go next? Then.
Well, to be fair, I was in Chicago before he got there, and then I was in the Bay Area before he got here. So I think he's following me. So I'm gonna let him know that next time I see that because I didn't think about that. Where I go next, he'll have to go too.
That was a tangent, but it also is a bit applicable because the character that you have brought for us to discuss today is Denzel Washington's Eli in The Book of Eli. What do you think about the San Francisco Bay Area being the promised land and the cradle of future civilization?
It was just so watching that movie, first of all, we didn't talk about this, but I'm sure you're aware of this. I used to have a Denzel Washington podcast. I hope to still have it someday. It's part of the retirement plan of is that when I can sit back and just enjoy Denzel Washington again. I still do publicly, but I still do it privately. But so I'm going to go to a Denzel Washington movie, just whatever. But that one specifically, I also have a part of me that is sort of superhero, sci-fi, nerdy sort of so when I saw the trailer for that, I'm Denzel's doing his post-apocalyptic cowboy movie. I was all right, sir. And then to get there and realize that, like, in classic Denzel Washington fashion, you're like, oh, this is about the nature of the world and how we are falling apart and how we have to have a mission to hold ourselves together, and that you don't even know which direction you're going all the time, but you know you have to go west. And then I'm in the Bay Area. Like, I've lived in the Bay Area. I was like, that's where I came here. I was on a mission when I came to the Bay Area. Like, it's my love for that movie is not rational. And I know that it's like, doesn't make a lot of people's top 5 Denzel Washington movies, but it's in mine. And since I'm an expert, I can do it.
I think also I think when you bring a prestige, and I mean, he's like the height of prestige. When you bring a prestige figure into a genre sort of escapade as it is, that really, like, it takes the material to a different place. Gary Oldman, I have a lot of feelings around, but he's a very impactful presence on screen. Yeah. And I watched that being like, man, Gary Oldman, makes sense, is one of our, like, great screen dickheads. And having him on the receiving end
maybe it's not all
of
on screen.
The righteousness of a God-empowered Denzel Washington, it was really satisfying. I hadn't watched this in a number of years, and it was really satisfying, even more satisfying, I think, this time around to watch it. And I think this movie has actually aged phenomenally well.
Well, I think that's true too. I think people got caught up in the fact that it wasn't just about the Force, that it names God. Like, I think that, like, people got, like, real sort of, like, you know, especially people who like that sci-fi world. I think they would rather it be metachlorians than actually, like, no, it's just a belief in this Force and this bigger being that, like, most of the world probably believes in, and we're just sort of it's just through this movie. So I think that was off-putting for people. I think that, you know, when you're like the whole time, you're like, what's the book? What's the book? And you find out what the book is. For many of us, it was like, oh, and for a lot of people, they're like, ah. So, but I also give Denzel credit because, like, it could have been, I'm sure, because I know enough about Denzel to know he is very much a Christian. He very much is, like, and I think he sort of went through some things early in his life that he's really, like, committed himself to. But he's not like a out in the world, like, loud Christian. He's that kind of guy who's like, he is just in his religion every day, in his belief, and it is motivating him to do good work. So I think that, like, that's where, and I think and also as a Black person, I understand that type of Christianity in a way that a lot of people don't understand. Like, I think a lot of people hear Christian and just immediately jump to like, you know, Christian evangelists who are ripping people off for money, or people who, like, sort of angry people outside of abortion clinics. And I'm like, no, there's a type of Christianity, especially Black Christianity, where it's like, how could I get through the day in this country if I did not believe in a higher power that then helped me get through this day? And also, if I didn't feel connected to my community and feel like if I have a level of privilege, which Denzel has an immense level of privilege, I should be doing things to help people.
Yeah. So when you first saw The Book of Eli, did you feel the resonance of this character with you, or, like, as someone you had sort of always been able to identify with? Or is this a kind of figure you feel like you've grown into relating to as you have gotten older?
It's funny because, I mean, first of all, I was probably older already when I saw this because I'm pretty old. But anyway, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. Which, like, even if you were somehow 80 right now, and then you at like 65, we're like, you know what? Something tapped into me in The Book of Eli. Like, I would love to know that as well.
Well, so I would say this, like, there are Denzel Washington movies that have, like, that as I've gotten older in my life, they mean more to me now than they did then. So, like, Man on Fire, when I initially saw, I was like, sort of like, you know, I don't know, like, we can give away spoilers. These movies are all forever 20 years old. But Man on Fire, I really wanted an action movie, and it becomes about a guy who's basically becomes the father figure in this little girl's life and will do anything for her. And at the time, I was single with no kids. I'm like, I just wanted an action movie. Now, as a dad, I'm like, I am the man on fire. I will give myself to the Colombian mafia if they will let my kids go. Like, I'm like, I get it now. 2010, Book of Eli comes out. I have at that point, like, written a solo show that because I'd stopped sort of working the club so much because I was like, this isn't going well. So I wrote my own one-person show called the W. Kamau Bell Curve, Any Racism in About an Hour. And and my friends were all like, you left the clubs to do a one-person show. Like, it's a comedians, when comedians do a one-person show, their friends go, it's like the rest in peace. So, and even though it was not in the clubs and not where the auditions were and not where the power is, I was like, this is the best work I've done in my life. I'm just going to pursue this. even if I don't know where it ends up. And there's no way at that point I could have said it probably ends up at CNN with me having 7 seasons of a TV show and me directing a documentary about Bill Cosby. There's none of that is in the, but like, so I understood very much that was like, that felt right to me. Like, yeah, sometimes you just got to like walk in the direction that I know it's this way. And even if I don't know how I'm going to get there, and it's like in the movie, there's all these scenes where it's like people are shooting directly at him and it just doesn't work. Like it just doesn't work. And I kind of love a movie that owns the fact that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Like people are like, why isn't it working? And it's just like, because he's on a mission. And the minute the mission is completed, he'll be done. Yeah. There's that early scene in the movie where he has the fight with the guys that is like in the tunnel where you can see like
it's all done in like silhouette and in shadow.
Are you listening to me?
I am now.
Good.
You listening to me?
Yeah.
Good. Put that hand on me again, you won't get it back.
God, that was good.
And it's choreographed by a guy named Jeff Amata, who is out of the school of martial arts. It's like off the Bruce Lee tree, which I know because I'm that level of nerd.
Awesome.
And so I was like, when I saw it, I was like, who did this? This is somebody who knows what they're doing. Found out it was Jeff Amata. Like, it's part of the old man action genre. Yeah. Like, as I start to get older, like, to see an old man who can kick ass, like, just very calmly kicks ass, and is the whole time he's very clear about, like, I'm going this way. If you want to come with me, that's fine, but I'm going this way, So to me, it was very inspiring. And then I left the theater and heard the response in the general public, and people were like, wah, wah, and just like, I was just like, okay, maybe I need to be quieter about this. Maybe it's not that good. Maybe it's not a good movie, but then every time I would watch it, I'd be like, I love this movie. Yeah. And so then on our podcast, which we had at the time, I promoted it to like being like, this is in my top 5. Yeah. I don't care. I don't care what anybody says.
That's me with Jennifer's Body. I completely relate.
Yes. There you go. There you go.
I'm going to take something out of my back. Take your finger off the trigger.
Yeah.
Eli is like one of the last reasonable men in a very unreasonable place. And I was like, just thinking of it like boiled down to like it's a simplest form in that way. I don't think it's belabored in like making the sort of bridges in this conversation that we're making to say that like what you do in a lot of your work, whether it's deciding to go into the one-man show with the W. Kamau bell curve or it's the CNN program or it's the book that's coming out. You are sort of on a path of like being the reasonable figure amidst ever more unreasonable environs and conflicts, and being a sort of middle person between warring sides or two sides that are completely unaware of one another and perhaps need to have a bridge built by empathy between them. And I wanted to hear about that sense of being like, do you feel sometimes like it's like, listen, I'm just trying to be a reasonable man in an unreasonable world?
I mean, I think here, the way I think about it is this: the platform I've been given, I've gotten this platform. I'm very clear. I don't deserve this platform. Maybe I worked for it, but I did not earn it. I just sort of like found myself in the position that I'm in, and I should take advantage of it. And one of those take advantages of it is like, make sure to do good work and always commit yourself to doing good work. And sometimes that's why I get too many things on my plate, because there's like too many things I think are good. 2, do work that your kids can, when they grow up, can be like, that was good work that my dad did. My daughter, for the first time, my 11-year-old, finally watched the whole episode of United Shades of America on Sunday for the first time. Other people's kids watch all the time. My kid's not interested. And so she was asking me during the commercials, like, I don't understand. What was that? And we were explaining it. And I just feel like I'm glad that I can do that work. And the other thing is like, if I'm going to have this platform in this increasingly fractured, hectic, aggressive, like innovating and triggering time, I got to do something with it. So even like when last week I was on CNN promoting United Shades, and my friends at the organization nonprofit Shout Your Abortion had sent me this T-shirt that said, "I will aid and abet abortion," and it was like, I was like, am I going to wear this on CNN? Like, is that okay? Well, who would tell me it's not okay? But I'm having this in my head, like, but what if I get in trouble? What are you what's trouble?
Right,
like, you're a grown man. What if they yell at me? Then they'll yell at you. Like, so I have to sort of like sometimes talk myself into the fact that like, that as much as people feel like I'm fearless, like I'm thinking these things through. And sometimes the look of fearlessness is just me saying like, put a brave face on. And I think a lot of us are in that position. So I feel like the thing that I feel like is like, there are things that I believe, things that I think need to be said, people who I think need to be highlighted. And I'm in this position where I can do that. And if I don't, then I'm really full of shit.
No, what you say about like, you know, using your kids as a touch point is just one example, like that presence of that external accountability. I'm always been a big fan of accountability, taking responsibility. It has become more and more important to me as I've gotten older. And just that notion of wanting that person I'm accountable to be proud of me and to know that I stood up for them has become like such a front of mind, most powerful motivator for how I want to go into situations that could feel fraught. But then it's like, am I really going to wear that shirt? It's like, yeah, I'm going to fucking wear that shirt.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm going to fucking wear that shirt. Because the alternative is like abortion bans. Like, it's not like me wearing the shirt stops the abortion ban, but it's me being like, you know what's a big enough deal to emblaze across my chest? Bodily autonomy and healthcare.
Yes.
Like, that really like sinks in for me hearing you talk about that.
Yeah, and I think that like that's a part of this. Like, you know, there's this sort of, I love the new slang. This one's not new, but I love the understood the assignment. Yeah, that idea of like that somebody, like, it's more than just did the job. It's like they understood to the extent how important the job was, and they accomplished the goals at their highest level. Is how I understand that to be. And so for me, if this is the position I'm in culture, then I need to understand the assignment. People like me because I think I'm funny. But they also like me because I think I'm funny, and I'm also uplifting voices and giving voice to people who don't get a chance to talk. And so that doesn't mean, I would love to be cast in a spandex superhero movie too. Yeah. But like, you know, I just want to be clear. But I'm not auditioning for them. What I am doing is making documentaries and going out to do, like, you know, making United Shades and calling my friend in the middle of the early days of COVID lockdown after George Floyd is murdered on TV, and you're like, and like, you're an author. I don't want to write another book, but I have this idea and I just can't get it out of my head. Even though it's going to be hard. It's going to put me on Front Street again. People might think the book is bullshit. Again, all this stuff about like, what if people hate it? Oh, well, you know, then they'll hate it. You know, so I think for me, that's the thing. It's just like there is a thing about like checking in with like who I am. Like I was a kid who wanted to be a comedian because of Eddie Murphy on SNL and Bill Cosby because of The Cosby Show. I thought that's the direction I was headed. Now, so happy I didn't head the Bill Cosby direction because that means a lot more now than it did to me then. Yes,
indeed, sir.
And Eddie Murphy still has that job. So like, I think he's not looking for a replacement. And I mean, I would say like Kevin Hart basically has that, you know, like it's just like, I just feel like that's not what I was put here for. Like, and I also am proud of the fact that like, much like the character in Book of Eli, I just started walking a direction, and then I looked up and was like, man, I couldn't have predicted where I ended up if I had did the thing that like, if I had just moved to LA as 5 years into comedy and started auditioning for every commercial and movie and sitcom and da-da-da and voiceover. And I have friends who did that who are now, you know, my friend Al Madrigal was in Morbius. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, and we were on the comedy scene together. I remember when Ali Wong started, and I was like, she's pretty good. We'll see what happens. Well, we've seen what happens. You know what I mean? So, like, my friend Hassan Minhaj, I was, like, on the scene when he was back in the day, and I was like, oh, this guy, he's cute, but I don't know if I think he's trying to talk about stuff, and maybe we'll see what happens. So it's like, I've seen all the different ways these careers can go.
I don't think I've ever talked to somebody who made more intense eye contact with me than Hassan Minhaj.
No,
I was like, oh my God, like, are we together now? Like, whoa.
And he's been like that. He's been like that. No, it's funny. There's a generation of comics that started after me, and he was in this. But like him and Ali Wong, I said, had that 1,000-yard comedy stare that like, oh, I'm going to make it. Okay. Oh, I'm going to make it. Like there was no like, what if I'm not good? I mean, I'm not saying they don't feel that way in there, but none of it came off of them. Like it all happened behind closed doors if it happened anywhere. Whereas my generation was all the like, I'm probably not good enough, you know.
They're dressing for the job they want from day one.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm the guy who goes and he goes, I want this job, but you're probably not going to hire me. This is dumb. I'm leaving. So
that's how you end up having 3 major projects come out in the first half of 1 year. Exactly. No, you're probably not going to hire me for this one, so I should do another thing to be safe.
I mean, to be clear, you're probably not going to hire me for this, so I should go do something on my own. Is what that is. Is like I'm probably not going to get this job, so I should probably go. You know, it's the idea of like, it's that what the MIT thing. MIT graduates want to create their jobs. They don't want to get a job. And I think for me in comedy, it was like, I need to create the lane because I just don't think, I mean, to me, it's like, I don't think that how I do what I do fits. I don't snap into places like a Lego piece. I'm Duplo.
Well, then that I think I really like that. I really like that like terminology of like creating the lane, and I think that dips into the conversation that I like to bring into this podcast in an overarching way, which is that like, do you feel like in media your kind of only option has been to create the lane because there haven't been sort of forebearers that have been allowed to represent a possibility of like so many career choices that you could be like, oh yeah, I'm going to be like that guy because by virtue of just like doors being fucking closed.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I do think about my career often as like, I'm really happy that I was born when I was, because this wasn't all possible. There weren't this many, and just on the very basic, like there weren't this many channels when I was a kid. So like, there were only like three jobs in comedy. like in one of them was Johnny Carson, host of The Tonight Show, and he didn't go anywhere for a long time. So he had that. So it's like there just weren't, and then there were less jobs for black people, and I just feel like it's just like I don't know. I mean, who knows? I think I just would have been I don't know. Would have just been a local, like every town has its local legends. That guy, we all thought he was gonna, so maybe I'd have been that guy. And those guys, I know a guy who liked that, but he's also invested in real estate with some of his early comedy money. So, he's doing fine. But I would have figured out something. Maybe I'd have gone back to college, but I'm aware that like this lane that I'm in, when I started doing stand-up comedy, there was no way to look at CNN and go, I hope to have a TV show on CNN.
Right. Yeah.
Like there was, what is that? So you're going to be a news anchor? Like there was no shows. And so like that wasn't a thing. And so for me, it's like these things sort of, and even when I got my first TV show that didn't exist, it wasn't until that show got canceled that then CNN started to like hire Tony Bourdain and Morgan Spurlock and Lisa Ling. So I saw that lane being created. And when it was, I was like, oh, look at that over there. And then I got invited into it. So I think I'm very aware that like, I would have done something, but the way in which my career works now wouldn't have worked. And so for most of my career, I think this goes back to the Bruce Lee thing. There's a Bruce Lee quote that is, I'm paraphrasing, like absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, and add what is specifically your own. And the idea being, so I think I've lived my whole life that way. Like, I could be like a little bit of that and a little bit of this, and I could put it all together. So like I said to somebody recently, like, they're like, what do you see your career going? I was like, some combination of Alex Trebek and Alex Gibney, the director, the documentary director. Like, I think, because I do think...
like the director of like the big, so many, but like the big Scientology documentary.
He did
like
the Scientology, he did the Elizabeth Holmes Theranos documentary, he did the Lance Armstrong. But he's like, he just, every couple years, there's like a big prestige Alex Gibney doc that comes out. He narrates them. So it's like, that's why I feel like there's a little bit of like, you can sort of feel his presence in there. And then everybody loved Alex Trebek. And I just feel like I would like to be somebody who eventually like had that job that like everybody's like, yay, you're just the best because we just like you. And I feel like to end up in that space would be where ultimately I'd like to be. So yeah, I've always been aware that like it was bits and pieces of other people and that it wasn't like that, especially at a certain point, which is why I was like, I'm going to go do my one-man show in this black box theater and just see what happens, even though that doesn't make any sense at all. That just feels like what I should be doing.
We're going to take a quick break, so stay tuned for more with W. Kamau Bell. And later, I have one quick thing about something I'm sure none of you are surprised to hear I have an opinion about, which is the trailer for the coming HBO series, The Idol. So let's process that together. But right now, stepping out for a break.
In the briefest time, I feel like we got to know each other.
Bro, I appreciate you so much for that.
Do you read minds or what?
It's really a very sacred space you've created here.
Bullseye! You've hit the bullseye, baby!
Bullseye. Interviews with creators you love and creators you need to know. From MaximumFun.org and NPR.
Hey, were you a reader as a kid? Like maybe you read a lot of fantasy novels?
Or horse girl books. We know how it is.
But now you're an adult and you miss reading. You're so busy and you can't figure out how to get back into books.
We're Reading Glasses, and we're here to help.
Yeah, we'll give you advice to figure out what books you love or learn to stop reading books you don't even like.
We're really big proponents of dumping that book.
Dump that book.
But most importantly, we'll help you fall back in love with reading. Reading Glasses, every Thursday on Maximum Fun.
Welcome back to Feeling Seen. I am talking with, as you know, W. Kamau Bell about his favorite actor, the Denzel Washington, in the Book of Eli. Now, I want to bring together a couple topics that we have hit upon where we just mentioned documentary work. You mentioned Alex Gibney, and obviously you work in docuseries, and that coupled with, we have talked about a couple of legends in this conversation. We have mentioned Eddie Murphy. We are talking about Denzel Washington and obviously Bill Cosby. And I wanted to talk to you about, having the conversation about, representation and idols and people we find ourselves in, and then how when we attach on to people, how they can take up such an outsized part of our lives and for good or for bad, depending on the shape that those figures, those real life figures, when they're real people, depending on what they sort of become. And like you said, Eddie Murphy's still Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy still got the job of Eddie Murphy. Yeah. Denzel Washington is Denzel motherfucking Washington. And Bill Cosby has shifted a lot from what Bill Cosby, the friendly Dr. Huxtable in a sweater, that he was for so long when dozens of women accused him of sexual assault. And so I wanted to talk to you about in We Need to Talk About Cosby, it seems like what you're doing in parallel is unpacking the figure that was and how we digest him with the figure we now know him to be, and trying to maintain those two things at the same time, because you kind of can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. The legacy and the persona is too big. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to talk to you about that double-edged sword of that kind of hero worship, where when we have these avatars, they can mean so much to us and they can blaze trails. But when they become more than human and something extremely human and fallible happens, it can break people. It can just sort of shatter something that people have organized huge emotional parts of their life around. And I wanted to hear sort of what you might have gleaned from that in the process specifically of making the Cosby docuseries. I
mean, I think, and that's certainly the thing you bring up is even more in the Black community, is even a thornier thing to deal with, because, people might like Matt Lauer, but I don't think he was a hero to the white community. I don't think he was or Kevin Spacey but whereas any Black person breaks through, there's a part of you're representing us. And also if you rise high enough, then we feel the need to protect you. So I think about somebody it's funny, as much as people sort of look at the R. Kelly thing, but obviously a convicted predator, assaulter, all of that stuff. And at the minute that happened, that it all sort of came to the forward, and Dream Hampton's amazing documentary, Surviving R. Kelly, I was every Black elementary school, 90% of Black churches at some point will sing "I Believe I Can Fly."
Yeah.
Because that song, even though it was from Space Jam, which is sort of
that was how I found it.
Yeah, but it's bigger than it's moved on from Space Jam, and it is just a song that people sing. It's become a sort of one of the new gospel songs. I Believe I Can Fly. Yeah, and it is played at anniversaries and weddings and graduations and Black people have and in churches filled with righteous people, and you go, what do you do with that now? Mm-hmm. Forget the R. Kelly songs that are weird because they're all about sex, and you're wait, what was he saying there? That stuff is, I think, easier for many people to go, I'm just going to let that go. But but some of that stuff is that's embedded in people, and it's going to be hard for them to let that go. And for me, and the same thing with Cosby, I've talked to the members of the crew about this a lot. We would be working on the edit, and we'd have clips from the Cosby Show or clips from his stand-ups, and you find yourself laughing because that stuff is still good and it still resonates. And so in the doc, we worked really hard on that section in episode 3 to really break down what made the Cosby Show great. Because unless you understand what made the Cosby Show great, you don't understand why we have such a hard time with what we found out, with all the accusations. Because you're it wasn't just a regular sitcom. It was first of all, a national phenomenon.
Yeah.
And for Black people, it was this is now going to be written in the canon of what Black excellence is, the Cosby Show. And so I'm for people who are like, I'm gonna throw it away. I'm like, I get that, but you have to also, I think, have to make space for people who are like, I believe that these women did this, but I can't throw this away.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
I feel like it's been a fascinating time from the onset of COVID to forward, sort of the realignment of celebrity in our consciousness. And like, I remember like I was working for Vulture at the time, and there was like, one of many posts that went up across the internet of like, are the celebrities okay with like, the Imagine video and Vanessa Hudgens flipping her hair going, people die. And it was like, I couldn't remember an experience like that prior to that in my life, where there was a sort of unmasking of celebrity in a way that felt so intense when it happened that it felt like people were waiting to be able to sort of break a set of handcuffs that were attaching them to these aspirational figures as infallible gods. But also at the same time, like, it's great to have aspirational figures, and it's great to have things that are just pure enjoyment. Like, it is. Can you believe in placing your hope in representation when you're always kind of waiting for someone to fuck up and have something completely horrible be exposed, where you're like, well, there goes another one.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I remember when that Imagine thing came out, and I remember it started going around, and I watched it. I was like, oh my God, this is awful. And then I was like, would you have done that if they called you? Yeah, I probably would have.
I have absolutely sat with myself and been like, if my friend called me and was like, I really want you to do this, I would say yes to my friend.
Also, if they had called me out, I'd been like, who's in that? Oh my God. Yeah, I'll be in it. I'd be clear. I've turned down lots of things. I'm like, that doesn't seem like a good look. But it's just like, who knows what I would have said if my agent had sent that to me.
An aspect that I was really focusing on when I was watching Book of Eli was Denzel Washington is going to make any character like eminently Denzel Washington. And there is such a stillness about Eli. And all of these terrible things are happening around him, sometimes to him. He is, he is at once like this messenger and also this sort of angel of vengeance and justice. But like through it all, he is even keel. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know that he raises his voice one time. We don't get like a Denzel yell. No. That character feels like he kind of has to be above any emotional reaction to be listened to be followed, because part of like being a black man even wandering through the post-apocalypse, like he couldn't be out of line. He couldn't be heavy-handed and angry.
Well, yeah.
And I wanted to hear from you about like, where do you, and dealing with so many contentious topics in the way that you do with like your documentary work, where do you find the role of anger fits in what you do? And do you feel like you are allowed to access anger when you are like the moderator of so many of these journalistic endeavors that you're a part of?
I mean, yeah, certainly, to quote the prophet who is now on tour with his band, Zach De La Rocha, anger is a gift. Like, I think that I would stake that, and they're one of my favorite bands. So certainly anger is a part of my get down. But I'm aware, especially being a 6'4", 260, don't worry about it, but big black guy. I've been aware for a long time that like people will like act like I'm angry when I'm not doing anything, or people will think like, calm down, sir. Like me and my black friends joke about that. Like, sir, calm down, but I'm not saying anything, so, I mean, so I'm aware, and also I'm aware that I'm just, I sort of joke about this, like when people look at me and they go, I don't know if that's because I'm a big black guy or because I'm the guy from TV.
Okay.
Especially white people. Black people, it's not usually, but that's sort of like, oh my God, what are you doing here? And there's this moment where I have to sort of let it play out. Now, if I react to that and get get defensive, then that's the story. So I think part of being funny is a defense mechanism. So it's a way that which you sort of can disarm situations without having to go ham the way Denzel does in Book of Eli. But Eli's not that funny, so he just has to go ham. I think it's funny. He's not. Denzel turned. I mean, that's an acting choice. Denzel turns down a lot of his natural Denzel charm for Book of Eli. He's not doing the things that make us go, ooh, Denzel. Like, he's really like. Yeah. He sort of turns it all the way down to like, I don't have time for anything but to stay on this mission, and I cannot be distracted. And so, yeah, so I think for me, it's like, I think I'm aware that like, this happens online all the time. People will try to bait me with things or say things. And there's moments where you're like, and you just hold on for a second, and you go, all right, just hit block. You know what I mean? Or if I say something, it's because I think it's funny, not because I'm actually really bothered by it. So I think for me, it's like there is that sense of like, I have a short trigger that's gotten shorter through the pandemic, just like the rest of us. But I'm aware because of the position I'm in and because of the mission I'm on, it is not worth getting into every fight every day about it. It is not. There's times in Book of Eli where he sort of avoids the fight and sort of keeps it moving. But there's times he's like, there's basically a thing that I like about the Book of Eli. He's got, like, do you really want to do this? Like there's sort of a like understated. That's an old man action trope. Like the old guy, like I try not to fight because it's not good for anybody when I do. And but if you want to do this, we can do this. And so
if you want to do this, everyone in here is going to die, and I'm not going to except me.
Yeah, except me. I'm not going to. You're going to be like, how did he not get touched? I don't know. I'm on a mission, so I got this book. You have to guess. But yeah, so I definitely think that like as a black man in America, and this is true of black people in general, and also we also know that we can't good behavior our way out of trauma and violence. Like it, you know, there's no way to. So I mean, you know, that's the like in the 90s, there was all this sort of like black people when you talk to the cops, be kind and polite and show them your hands. And you can do all that stuff and still end up dead. So it's still. You're just trying to like play the percentages and mitigate the circumstances, knowing that it could still end up in a bad place.
You mentioned like being, you know, for the mission that you're on. When did the mission start clarifying itself to you? Was it like around the W. Kamau Bell curve? Was it after you'd been doing that for a while? Like was the mission part of it when you got into comedy and it became like a mutual vehicle for both? Or did the mission and the comedy, did they enter your lives separately?
I grew up in a house with mostly my mom, single parent home. Would see my dad in the summers, but where there was the talk of race and racism was just what my mom did. And also I just wrote about this on Twitter the other day, and I was an only child and she didn't always have money for babysitters or didn't care to get babysitters. So I ended up in a lot of grown folk situations, sort of sitting in the corner. And I was hearing black people post the civil rights movement talk about why things still weren't great, you know. So I had a joke in my act back in the day of like I was 11 years old before I realized that a cracker was also a delicious snack. So like, you know, yeah. So it was like I was like hearing all this talk about the man and what we're going to do and the da-da-da and all this from black professional people, like, you know, from the people who were supposed to be like, I won because I'm the only black person who works there. So and also going to church, and that was like my mom always wanted to go to churches where they actually were. It's like sort of out of the tradition of Martin Luther King Jr., where it's not just about the pie in the sky; it's about what do we do here. So I just was always around adult conversations, and it was always about race and racism, and that's the way my mom made money was by selling books about racism. She had a book of famous black quotations. So I feel like that was sort of like always going around. But at the same time, I was a kid who just wanted to do comedy because of Saturday Night Live and Jerry Seinfeld and Bill Cosby, you know, that's what I want to do. Like it has nothing to do with the mission. Yeah. When I started to do comedy, it just sort of like, I sort of realized if I told jokes about regular comedy nonsense, crowds would laugh and if I ever talked about being black, and I started on the north side of Chicago, so it was predominantly white crowds, it would get tense, and Chicago's a racially tense city. Now, I also was not very funny. Let's be clear about that. Then I moved to the Bay Area, and I just sort of like, I would sort of see like, if I do these jokes, crowds are okay. If I do these jokes about race and racism, things get tense. So I sort of would mix them in. Yeah. But you might hear a joke about how men's and women's magazines are different. That's breaking news. And then you'd hear a joke about me being followed by the police. And it's sort of like, maybe some of the jokes were good or not, but it just didn't all add up to anything. And then it wasn't until I got a chance to be on Premium Blend on Comedy Central, which was like their comedy showcase show. And I was like, I'm going to put together a set that is just the black shit. Like, so the set is like 5 minutes long. Okay. And I'm just going to, and the black stuff. And also I had a joke, and this was 2000, I want to say this is 2005. Yeah, 2005. And I have a joke about this guy named Barack Obama who people say could be president someday. So I did my joke about Senator Barack Obama.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. And that later Comedy Central said was the first joke about Barack Obama ever on TV or whatever. So I had that used to be in my bio for a very brief period of time because I didn't have anything else.
That's for the Wikipedia.
Yeah, but so I did this joke, and it was like, and I talked about I did the joke about cracker, and I had a joke at the time that said I'm the product of a mixed marriage. My dad is black and my mother's black. And it worked, and it was good, and I sort of like, and so I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. But then over the course of the next 2 years, I just couldn't get it to all fit together. And I got really bummed out about comedy clubs being places where people like would just like move on to the next subject or talk about something dirty. And that's when that's when I decided at some point to like, okay, I'm just going to go to a different space. I'm going to go to a small black box theater. I'm going to put my name on the marquee. And if you want what I'm selling, it's in there. So if you come into that door, I get to do whatever I want to do. It clarified very quickly after that.
Now, when the very end of the Book of Eli, when we're crossing the Golden Gate Bridge, and then we go,
and I'm crying in the theater. I'm like in the theater, like that's where I live.
It is so moving anytime I see the Golden Gate Bridge.
That's why they destroy it in so many movies, because they know it hurts your feelings.
I lived in the Bay for 7 years, and it was 7 wonderful years, and it feels like living in San Francisco feels like living in a place that the fog washes in, and then when the fog goes away, you disappear with it. Like, it feels like a place sort of in its own snow globe in many ways.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's like San Francisco, not a city, it's a hamlet. It's a
hamlet. It really is. And when like even like computer generated decimation on a bridge that's like split in half by disaster, I was like, oh, it's the city.
Like, the city, as we call it. Look, the city's still there.
You know, I see myself in Mila Kunis freezing her ass off on a boat in the San Francisco Bay. Utterly relatable.
Yeah.
And I wondered when I was watching at the very end, like, is this movie, like, conscious of the implications of being like, we will restart civilization from an infamous prison island?
Feels like a museum.
Oh, no, it's much more than that. This is where we're going to start again. We've got a printing press. It'll be operational quite soon. We're going to teach people about the world they lost. Help them start to rebuild it.
We will remake the world in a better image and distribute the written word, and we will be the center of sort of like getting art and culture back out into the populace from a Did they pick Alcatraz because it was a pretty island? Or do you think they were like, this means something?
I don't think there's any way you pick Alcatraz and just think of it as a pretty island. The name, I mean, my kids know what Alcatraz is, and we've never been. It's just like they already know that it's the prison island. So
yes.
I think I always think about this. Like I remember the great screenwriter, rest in peace, William Goldman, wrote like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, wrote Misery, wrote The Princess Bride, like just, he basically wrote in every genre of film you can write in. And he has a series of books about screenwriting called, one of them, the one I'm thinking about is called Which Lie Did I Tell? Which I recommend it for people interested in Hollywood and screenwriting. And part of the thing he says is that what you don't realize as a viewer of movies is that if an A-list actor gets signed on to something, they also come with a writer who goes, now I'm going to, whatever the script says, I'm going to now fix this so there's enough of this actor's things that they like to do in movies in this.
Yeah.
And some of that is, or this character now, instead of being a lawyer, is going to be a teacher because she wants to play a teacher. You know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's just sort of this, and I don't think there's an accident that I kind of wonder, and we interviewed for our Denzel podcast, the writer of Book of Eli, and I don't think we asked this question. I kind of wonder if there's a draft of that where it's not the Bible.
That's because watching it this time, I was taken aback. I'd forgotten how long it takes them to actually say. Yeah. Gary Oldman's Heavy, Carnegie's Heavy, is like, you know, why is this so important, basically? And he's like, it's not a book, it's a weapon.
Yep.
It's not a fucking book. It's a weapon. A weapon aimed right at the hearts and minds of the weak and the desperate. It will give us control of it.
And Denzel saying at one point, like, they say that this book was the reason for the war in the first place, like the Great War that destroyed the world. But I don't know that they actually say it until he is on the boat rowing to Alcatraz with guns pointed at him, and he says, I am in possession of a King James Bible.
Yep.
Like, they keep it broad until the very close, and I was like, wow, because they very cleverly obscure the cover. He constantly hides the visual of the book, and it's only when Gary Oldman asks Solara, Mila Kunis' character, what did the book look like, and she holds up a cross with her fingers.
That's right.
That we get any indication of what this could even be. And obviously he's, quoting familiar lines, though I walked through the valley of the shadow of death, but they don't actually say Bible till the very end. So that's a very good point.
Yeah, I feel like there's probably definitely was batted around. Like, does it have to be the Bible? Like, I feel like there's probably versions where they're like, could it? Because, that's how they works in Hollywood. I mean, just humor me for a second. Let's pretend it's not the Bible. Let's pretend it's a Thomas guide, whatever it is. Or Julia Child's Joy of Cooking. That brings people together.
Yeah.
So I think that, like, I just wonder, I just really feel his presence in a movie like Book of Eli, because I think if they had told him it's a, it's a Sears catalog, he'd have been like, I'm not interested. I think he needed it to be.
Yeah. It's commerce.
Yeah. Like, I think he needed it to be. And so that's the other thing I feel like some Denzel Washington movies benefit if you really know his career and pay attention, because you're like, oh, this is in response to the other stuff that's out there. Oh, this is him like really owning this lane of sort of, this is a way for him to get his version of Christianity in here in a way that is acceptable to him. Because, a lot of actors wouldn't want to be in a movie where the hero is the Bible. Like, it's not like, so.
Yeah.
And not in a bad way. So, yeah, I think it's.
Yeah, especially coming out in the most godless time, which was the 2000s in pop culture.
No, it's so I do think I've watched it several times since then. I agree with you. I do think it is aged better, and I think if you look at his films, that wherever people ranked it back then, it's going to move up higher. Just because I think, especially now, when people are like really want some sort of sense of like, how do we get through this? What's the mission? What can I do? And it's like, get up every day and walk in the direction that you know that you can do the most good in. You
know what? I was going to like try and ask a wrap-up question, but I think that's the wrap-up. Like, I think that parting note is the wrap-up. And so is there any last shouts out you would like to give, W. Kamau Bell, to the people of all the things that are this year for you? What is the thing that is most new and now that people can go out and watch or buy or find?
The book, I'm really excited about the book coming out, Do the Work. It really, me and my friend Kate, who wrote it, Kate Schatz, who also wrote the book, Rad American Women A to Z, our motto for the book is funny but not fucking around. They didn't let us put that on the cover. But it is a book for people who have been through the last 2 years and who went through 2020 and thought there was a racial reckoning and are now like, wait, I don't know if we reckoned with that, or think there was one when there wasn't. It's an activity book to actually introduce you or speed you along through how to turn America into an anti-racist society. And I'm really proud of it and excited for it to get out there. And yeah, United Shades is on the air. But so those two things.
W. Kamau Bell, thank you so much for taking the time and joining me. I am so grateful that people do this with me and have long conversations. And so thank you. I just so appreciate you coming on and getting a chance to put some shine on a Denzel title that is not necessarily in people's like Twitter top 5 lists of appointment Denzel, but I disagree.
Yes. To all the other podcasters out there connected to Denzel Washington, and you're more likely to get me to show up. Denzel Washington, Bruce Lee, or Michael Jordan, and I'll be like, I should probably show up.
Well, thank you for joining us again, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me. This was fun. And also happy to do things for Max Fun.
Thank you to W. Kamau Bell. Do the Work, an anti-racist activity book, has just hit the shelves. And the cover of the book really tips you off to what you're going to find inside. It says, quote, "For all the people overwhelmed by racial injustice and white supremacy in America, who've taken some action and know they can do more, but don't always know what to do or how to do it, or are afraid of getting it wrong, or not knowing enough, and are left wondering, what do I do?" So if that's you, there you go. And honestly, that's all of us. If you're white, if we're white, that's like true. Like, do the work. So yes, thank you, W. Kamau Bell. And now I'm going to truly defile the entire previous conversation. And I have one quick thing to say before I go. God. Recently, the first trailer for Sam Levinson's series, made in collaboration with The Weeknd, known legally as Abel Tesfaye, they have come together, as the title card tells us, from the sick and twisted minds of. And like, if a thing's gonna tell you, somebody had a great reaction to this on Twitter. It was like, they had the title cards like from the sick and twisted minds of, and it was like a meme image of Bernie Sanders with like eyes wide, looking so intrigued and horrified. And then it said like Sam Levinson, like the guy who brought you HBO's Euphoria, and then like the following image is Bernie Sanders looking very underwhelmed by that fact. See, the problem with this guy is that I'm going to watch his shit, and I'm not proud of that. I don't like that about myself, but I know it's true because I watched this trailer and it seems to be about either an aspiring or an established or becoming more established, I don't know, pop figure, celebrity figure in the form of the stunning Lily Rose Depp, young Lily Rose Depp. She is taking to the streets and the nights and the stages of Los Angeles, perhaps aspiring to dreams of great stardom. And she falls into the influence of I don't know, maybe mysterious figure or just obviously awful figure in the form of The Weeknd, who is, as I understand it from reading the description of the show, a cult leader. He's like a guru and a cult leader. And he comes to form a very complicated, I guess, bond. We'll call it bond in the most polite sense in the most polite possible euphemism for whatever goes on between the two of them. Lily Rose's character. And what would a Levinson series be without a fucked up power imbalance between two characters having a possibly inappropriate sexual relationship? What would a work of his be without that? But I will say, the thing is, this man gets the best casts of people in his shows. I know nothing about The Weeknd as an actor. Fine, indifferent. But this, guys, Troye Sivan's here. Debbie Ryan, you guys, is here. Rachel Sennett is here, star of Shiva Baby, star of the upcoming Bodies, in which she steals every minute of screen time. She's present. Jenny Kim, that's right, K-pop fans, that's right, Blackpink Nation. Jennie from Blackpink is credited in the show. Hari Nef is here. Here's two you need to prepare yourself for. Anne Heche. Anne Heche is in The Idol, you guys. And you know who else is credited for all 6 episodes? Elizabeth fucking Berkley. So somebody responded to me on Twitter when I posted the trailer and they're like, I'm getting Showgirls vibes from this. And then I looked up the cast and saw Elizabeth Berkley and was like, wow, too true, guy. Turns out. But here's the bitch of it all for me personally. As much as I see the tent poles of what this is, and I know that Amy Seimetz was supposed to direct this series, and then they went in a different creative direction. So as long as this show, which is completely marketing Lily Rose Depp as the gonna carry you through the narrative on her tiny, beautiful shoulders character, I'm gonna be happy about it in that way. I'm gonna be glad it's the Lily Rose Depp show. But this is the way that this thing got its hooks into me, and I just have to give myself over to it. I have to admit that, which is there's a moment in this trailer for this show amidst a woman literally shouting, a choreographer literally shouting, more orgy at a group of dancers. Come on. After saying, drop it, spank it, screw you, man. My neon demon heart is obviously fluttering at this point. And then there's a big king's table filled with people, and The Weeknd looks at Lily Rose's character and says, why don't you just be yourself? And Lily Rose Depp just looks at this person with disdain and drips at him because there's nothing about me that's relatable. And God, could that be more true coming from the unbelievably sculpted visage of Lily Rose Depp? This show's going to be depraved, probably, and it's going to make me uncomfortable, and it's going to look really good, and I'm just hoping Lily Rose Depp gets, a great platform to be kind of awesome, because I think there's a lot of potential here, and yeah, so that's my complicated feelings on the new insert Sam Levinson property here, this one in the form of The Idol. So come with me on this journey of being emotionally compromised over a show about beautiful people, which is 100% on brand for me. And that, we've come to the end of it. I told you I was going to defile the entire preceding conversation, and I did. That is our show. You can follow us on Twitter at FeelingSeenPod or send us an email at feelingseen@maximumfun.org. If you want to follow me, I'm Jorcru on Twitter. That's JORCRU. Our theme music is by Andrew Eapen. The show is produced by Marissa Flaxbart. Our senior producers are Kevin Ferguson and Laura Swisher, and this is a production of Maximum Fun.
MaximumFun.org.
Comedy and culture.
Artist owned. Audience supported.